A broker gets a simple question: what do we know about this tenant? And the honest answer is that that's probably located in 5 systems at minimum. Relationships in one, the deal and commission data in another, a comp research database hidden somewhere, and the real history buried in some email chain that you received months ago. 5 systems, 1 question. So what does the broker actually do? What do we do? Most of the time, they don't go to all 5. They go with what they remember and their memory. And as good as it is, getting a little less complete every day, candidly. The reality is your firm has the data. It's never really been a data problem. It's an experience problem. Rob, you've heard this many times over, and heck, even as recently as this week. Tell us a little bit about what you're hearing out there in the market.
No, you're spot on. I was just talking to a customer earlier this week, and the scenario is becoming one that's more and more common, and that is, they've made a lot of investments in systems over the years. They have very valuable tools that run their business today, but in many cases, the data is trapped in those tools. And, to your point, they go ask a simple question, and the customer I was talking to earlier this week, we have to dig, we have to, go look for this information. We can't find it. And it's very, very challenging for them today. And they're starting to ask questions like, how does AI and how do some of these new capabilities ultimately help us, solve this kind of ultimate challenge that's been there forever? And that is being able to get to the data that we know is in our systems, but it's not readily available.
Yeah, most of these folks are trapped between hearing all this noise about AI, but having no real material vision of how to execute that and have them benefit from it. And so I think that's what a lot of this discussion is going to be about today. So real quickly, I'm Wes Snow. Rob, who you've heard, is one of our executives that's mixing it up with our clients and our prospects and really has his ear to the ground on what you and what they're thinking about and what their problems are. And we've got Todd. Todd's my business partner and a bit more technical than Rob and I. And if the situation arises where we might have a little bit of a tech talk, he'd be the guy to do that on this call. So welcome to the
keep it short.
call, guys. All right. Yeah, we promise. So Rob, let's dig in a little bit more to this reaction that you're hearing, and that it does seem like it's becoming quite prevalent and ever present on almost every one of your phone calls.
Yeah, and I think the reaction, as you said, Wes, is they've heard this before, right? They've invested in these systems. They did so with the promise that, hey, here's one tool or here's one solution that will be able to kind of help you run your business and give you all the information and the insight that you're looking for on a daily or a monthly basis, for example. But it hasn't panned out for them that way. And, in many cases, they've made a lot of investments. They've poured a lot of time, effort, money into these systems, and the value proposition that they were promised is still elusive. They're still not able to kind of do some really simple things. So I think there's some warranted skepticism, if you will, out there when it comes to, hey, we've heard this before. How's it different this time, right?
Yeah. And we're kind of part of that ecosystem, right? We've been selling CRM or customer relationship management to the commercial real estate sector for the last 20 years. And the reality is when they see this message of a CRM that centralizes all the data that's candidly siloed and in all these islands of information, spreadsheets over here, perhaps somebody's got a contact manager over here, very popularly. Outlook is a poor man's CRM, where they're using it for obviously email, calendar, and contact management. But compared to that, the messaging that we've been putting out there for a centralized system is a pretty attractive one. But hidden in all of that is this burden that we pass to the customer. And of course, we import data and so forth, but it's that ongoing contribution of new relationships and new transactions and data that ends up being where the friction starts, and that they're now being asked to open up a form here and enter data here. And it's a tax that we quietly don't even mention in these conversations there. And the reality is, with the advent and advances in AI, that tax, as I'm referring to it, has been repealed in many ways. You don't have to play by those rules. And reality isn't pre-AI, there really wasn't an alternative. So we all just sucked it up and said, this is as good as it gets. Yes, there's refinements on user interfaces, making it more intuitive. But at the end of the day, you're still interacting with an application that has forms and fields that need to be filled out and so forth. And there's just a really interesting paradigm shift, if you will, just to ground it. Literally, you've got a new relationship. You open up CRM, open a net new record form, tab through a collection of fields to capture all that data. And then you hit save, and hopefully you've got it there preserved for not only your benefit, but for others. And reality is people don't do it, even if they know it's in their best interest to do so. So to fast forward to AI, and you think about all the things that are in your head that are simply captured there and nowhere else, or it's in an email or a document. Imagine a world where that which is in your head could be spoken to a system, whether that be a laptop or an iPhone, and having all that information moved from your head and memorialized and centralized into a database that you have for reference and your peers have for reference, forwarding an email from your inbox to an AI tool that immediately goes out there and intelligently transforms the intelligence within that particular email, and having that be now available to you and others to access. And document abstraction has been something that people have done manually for years. With AI, that's really easy to do now with AI, and not only abstracting it, but centralizing all that. So this is the world that we're in, and it just is a key unlock for everybody who's struggled with this problem of getting data in and out of the system. Rob, maybe you can speak a little bit to that a bit.
Yeah, I think you said it well. The skepticism that we talked about earlier, right? What's different this time? What's different this time is how AI lets these customers take all of these very important sources of information in their business and not try to make them perfect anymore. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing as a practice and as a firm as we work with our customers. Is in the past, you had to go really structure all these systems and spend a lot of time and effort, as we talked about earlier, to get everything just right, almost as if you were trying to get the answer ready for the question that hadn't arrived yet, right? And it's not like that anymore, because AI offers this layer of intelligence, if you want to call it that, or just a capability, if you will, that says my data doesn't have to be perfect anymore. And for that matter, my data doesn't have to be in one place anymore. It can be scattered around the organization. And if you want to think about that even further, which I know we talk a lot about, it doesn't have to be in my organization. I can do things like take a lease listing, for example, and I want to do a little bit of a competitive market analysis of that as a broker and see if I've got it priced right. Well, today using AI, that's a simple process. I can go ask it a question. How does my lease compare to every other lease, the comparable property type within a 5-mile radius? Well, that seems like a really logical question, but the data behind that is a combination of internal, external, all coming together, in the form of an answer. And I think, as we've used that word unlock a few times, that's the big unlock, is the data doesn't have to be perfect anymore. And for that matter, it can be scattered and kind of dirty, to use that term in terms of data, and you can get it,
Interesting that you're kind of honing in on this scattered data. And imagine, I think this metaphor helped me, pre-technology, a broker or anybody who's in business who has a research assignment and perhaps has an assistant, a chief of staff or what have you, and approaching them with a simple, non-scripted question. Hey, let's get me everything I need to know in preparation for this meeting that I'm about to have this afternoon. They don't know where that data resides. That's the job of the assistant or the chief of staff or whomever. They know where it is. And moreover, they know exactly what your intent was when you uttered those words. Give me everything I need for that particular meeting. And immediately with that simple request, they were able to go out there and bring that information back, that answer, and perhaps even some supplementary artifacts that helped you that you might not even have asked for. Imagine now having that virtualized and not being something that requires that you have that superhuman assistant, but rather an agent or AI doing that same job for you, where you literally same natural language request and it being smart enough to know what you asked for, what the true intent was, and being able to go to all those sources and serve that up to you like we were talking about in the pre-technology era there. Rob, you also were, I think, getting into one piece here that I wanted to drill into, and it's something I think that people underestimate. There's internal systems, but this assistant, these AI tools, if you will, do a good job of harvesting data outside of their corporate knowledge sphere as well. Maybe you can speak to that, because I think that's also a huge unlock.
Yeah, I think it's just what you described. It's how agents and brokers work today, to the research assignment that you just highlighted. It inevitably has them looking at information, various sources that reside inside an organization or brokerage in this case. And it almost inevitably involves them going outside into, various sites, aggregators of listing data, et cetera, other market data. All of that kind of comes together now, if you use that term, magically, right? Like you don't have to think about all those systems being perfect. You don't have to think about the different, levels of access and integration. It's just a simple exercise, and AI is creating that simplicity, if you will, by the intelligence that it can bring to that. And I kind of use that word magic. I mean, this is maybe where Todd can help out, because, it does sound a little magic. And I think there is some skepticism in the past based on a lot of investments, that we've seen our customers make in the past too. But it's very much different this time. And I know, Todd, you're seeing that quite a bit, and you can kind of speak to in many ways that it's not magic, that it really is something that's a reality today, right?
Yeah. I'm hearing, I'm listening, and it's really interesting to hear you guys talk about the way data is now flowing like a river so easily. It doesn't need to be clean. It doesn't even need to be from a single source like CRM, and all that's true. But it is definitely not magic. And from my perspective, over 30 years of doing these CRM implementations, and really, of course, as a company, we want our customers' investments to be realized. That implementing an enterprise system is very expensive. And so we took our experience and our learnings to our customers, saying things like, user adoption is going to be your biggest challenge, and here are some of the things we can do to make sure your users embrace the system. There has to be something in it for them. There has to be something that makes them more productive. And invariably, it was still difficult because, salespeople get on a roll and they don't want to interrupt their day to start filling out forms. And that, to me, is where the magic of AI helps come in. It's a layer. It's a different type of UI that unlocks this friction between the user and the system of record. The system of record is still incredibly important, and it's not something we can just say, oh, you don't need it anymore. You need it, because that is kind of if you think about a hub and spoke, the hub is that CRM or that ERP system that contains your customer information and the important elements of the transactions that they've made in the past, those kinds of things that you need to build documents or artifacts that you can trust. All the rest of the things, what AI really makes so interesting, that happened in the phone calls and the emails that don't always make it into the CRM system, and it enriches that data along with the system of record. Together, it really makes it much more powerful. And I think what the magic is in AI is unlocking the user's ability to more easily get that data in and out, so that all those things together synthesized, it increases the professionalism of the user. It increases the quality of the output. And it can, if they use it correctly, can absolutely multiply their capabilities of being successful.
There used to be one way to consume that data, right? And now there are dozens, if not hundreds of ways to do it. And many, if not all of them, they just align better with the way, these folks are going about their day and working, which I think
That's
that
true.
does feel magical, right?
It does. Yeah.
Let's go back to how we opened up this session, where it was that broker got that one question. And that's kind of an outward facing statement. We're not a brokerage. We're a technology company, but we still face the same challenges. And this is really the part that I love, because that which we've been talking about isn't something we've read about. We've lived it and we're living it. Go back last week, had a lead come in who had been dormant for 6 months. Lots of very engaging discussions with them prior to, some of which, if not all, were recorded using an AI note taker. Some of it was documented in emails, and then there were files shared and things of that nature. In days past, it would have been my afternoon to go out there and do a research assignment to get up to speed so that I could be properly prepared and grounded for what we need to talk about, right? And not ask the questions that I had already asked, and be able to be more value add in that discussion. So, we've got Microsoft Teams. the note taker, email, we've got the CRM system and Outlook. This is something that Todd, you've been helping us out with to make that a reality, not just academically, but for us. So maybe you can speak to the real world experiences that we have.
Yeah. So it started with our individual, let's say, enlightenment when we first started using AI and the ability for us to go grab information that was reachable to us as an individual, whether it be file shares or especially email, like you're mentioning, our CRM system, transcripts. And the thing that we really highlighted the potential of how powerful this is the fact that we could go manually find that information, go get the email, copy paste it into Claude, browse to the particular files that the customer had sent us and upload it to Claude, and then copy paste something else from a CRM system. And then once all that information is collected into Claude's context, then we start interviewing Claude and having it help us synthesize this data to create the proposal or to prepare for the next meeting or whatever that task might be. So the thing that you just did, first you think, wow, this is something that used to take me half a day. It just took me an hour to do. But the problem is, the challenge is, it was still just the data that was reachable for you. And your colleagues, your team members don't have the same benefit of all that same information. They have different information that they have access to, but not your information. So what we're doing is we're trying to make this corporate memory more available to our teammates, to our colleagues, when instead of you just trying to strategize on how we put together a project, it's the other team members that are also available that you're working with can also do the same without having a lot of complicated ways to, how do I get this information to you? And here, let me set up a temporary file share or things like this. So what we're trying to do internally is make it much more easy to have this data organized and reachable so that our AI systems can help collaborate on this. And the things that you're learning through your interactions with AI, they can also have the benefit of that.
And in that example you mentioned, I think what you were articulating was V.1 of our AI journey, which was copying and pasting emails and so forth, right? And now with the advances of AI and the framework surrounding it, that copy and paste step is now gone, right? And so you've already got it connected to those various systems, and this AI tool is now dynamically grounded in that corpus of all that data that still may be in what we technically call islands of information, but is now readily available to be centralized and reasoned, which I think is that next level, that V.2 of our internal AI journey.
I think in simple terms for a real estate broker, it lets them stop thinking about tools and start thinking about outcomes. Even if those outcomes are just really simple, routine, daily kind of things, they don't have to, like you were describing, Todd, they don't have to think about where to go find all of that data, get it all into one spot, and then start their analysis. It just lets them think kind of more conveniently and more naturally and just get the answer or the outcome that they're looking for and don't worry about the tools anymore. And, that is in and of itself what makes this different this time, I think.
But we have new things to worry about because we keep using the word friction, because the friction's practically been removed and this information is free flowing. The new problem we have is, where did this data come from? Can we trust it? And can we trace it back to the source? And if we depended on AI a little bit too much to make some decisions or some judgment calls, it may be the right call. But when that broker is standing before an investment panel and they say, how did you get this number? Well, in the old days, they know exactly where that number came from because they did all the research and the studies and they poured over it, and their mental commitment was there in order to get it. Now AI has made it so easy. They may not know where that data came from, or they may have guessed. And so the types of systems that are important to build now are the ones that have this provenance, this traceability, and enough human in the loop to at least understand in this workflow, where is this data coming from, and am I making the right judgment calls in order to get it where we need it.
Yeah. I think we're all guilty of getting sucked into the vortex of AI being so simplifying of our lives that we've kind of checked our brain at the door and said, it came back, it was quick and easy, and I've got something else to do, so I'll live with the consequences. But I think it's extremely important. The stakes are high when you have ungrounded data. So that's a really good point there, Todd. So, in closing, the thing that I would have the audience walk away with is, for 30 years, you've had to meet the software and quote unquote machine on its terms. clean your data, structure it, learn its software, wire the systems together, do all that first, and then maybe you get something back. That era is over. And if you're not thinking in these terms, you're really you talk about FOMO, fear of missing out. That used to be a fear that was unfounded, and now it absolutely is true. You are missing out. So I would have you do this. Count how many systems on a daily basis you or your team open up to answer questions that come in on a daily basis. That number is really your problem statement and what you need to solve for. And ask whether that data that you have is reachable, not just organized, and figuring out which of those systems is really the capture layer and whether it's capturing anything. So, gentlemen, any closing comments there? And in addition to that challenge for the audience?
I'll just say that it's an exciting time to be a technologist. It's an exciting time to be working with customers who are in the midst of a type of transformation. We've thrown around digital transformation for the last decade or so. Well, now it's even accelerated faster. Although some challenges have almost been wiped out, we have new ones, and we're excited to be there to work with our customers to meet those challenges.
Yeah, I think it's an incredible time. It's an incredible time where you see a lot of historical investments that have been really challenging to kind of get the value to surface for them are starting to show that those investments mean something, that now you can kind of get that value to come out of those systems and that data that these firms have built over the years. So it's an amazing period of time, and we're seeing it every day with our customers. And it's, as both of you guys have said, it's transformational for sure.
So in short, we've been trailblazing a while on this AI journey, and we've learned some lessons, gotten some things wrong, and we have a lot of really refined perspectives. So if any of this has resonated with you on the podcast here, feel free to reach out. We'll compare notes. But until then, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.